In northern Honshu, there's a little village called Shingo. It has an agricultural economy growing chrysanthemums, yams, and tobacco. It has 2 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, no high schools, and the Kirisoto no Haka, aka the Tomb of Jesus Christ. Yes, you heard me right. The Tomb of Jesus Christ. Now, this isn't just the tomb where Jesus was temporarily buried until his resurrection like this pathetic excuse for a burial site. No. This one has the actual body of the Lord and Savior of this Christian Minecraft server. Let me tell you the story. Long ago, when Jesus was 21, he backpacked his way across Siberia and down into Japan, where he studied for 12 years. At the age of 33, he returned to Roman Judea to perform his ministry. But when the Romans tried to arrest him, Jesus' brothers stepped in and took one for the team, being crucified in his place. After this, Jesus noped right out of there and decided to go back to Japan, taking with him a lock of hair from the Virgin Mary and his brother's severed ear, and settled in what is now Shingo. He married a Japanese woman named Miyuko, with whom he had 3 daughters, and he spent the rest of his life teaching, healing, and tending to his rice farm.
Welcome to the rice fields, motherfucker!
His bones were placed in a burial mound next to one that contained the lock of the Virgin Mary's hair and his brother's severed ear. The New Testament names 4 brothers of Jesus: James, Joseph, Jude, and Simon. But none of them were willing to take a bullet for Jesus. Instead, it was his totally not an OC brother, Iskari.
One of these things is not like the others. One of these things doesn't belong.
And every spring, there is a festival in which the locals dance in order to console the angry spirit of Jesus. Okay, so I'm certain by this point you're wondering, what the hell was that? Well, I was wondering the same thing when I came across this topic on a video on the channel called Abroad in Japan. And it turns out he wasn't the only one to have covered this topic. However, most of the videos don't go very deep into the subject. They just go, hey, look at this weird thing. See how weird it is? Wash, rinse, repeat. Preferably for at least 20 seconds right now. But that wasn't enough for me. You see, this is the exact kind of weird niche stuff that I love. And so I decided to dive deeper. And what I found was Japanese imperialist propaganda, occult racism, and UFOs. So come with me as we look at the story behind the weirdness. The local museum attached to the shrine claims that this story comes from a document called The Last Will and Testament of Jesus. But the original was destroyed during World War II, so all they have left are modern transcriptions. It also claims that the ancient residents of this village had numerous practices that were different from the rest of Japan, such as the villagers wearing toga-like robes, newborn children being kept in baskets while being swaddled in blankets embroidered with stars of David, and on top of all that, it claims that young children would have a cross-shaped talisman drawn on their foreheads in charcoal. The evidence for any of those practices are dubious at best. However, the Last Will and Testament of Jesus Christ might have another source, even if the document itself and its origin story are apocryphal. In 1933, a collection of documents containing a secret history of Japan and its relationship with the rest of the world was discovered by a Shinto priest, Takuji Documents. This document claimed that the human race, as well as all religions, originated in Japan, and that figures such as Moses, Buddha, Confucius, Muhammad, and Jesus all went to Japan to receive spiritual training. These writings are collectively known as the Takuji Documents, and were the centerpiece in an ultra-nationalist Shinto movement, Amatsukyo. Takuji Documents is said to have visited Shingo after having found the documents and discovered the burial mounds of Jesus and Iskari in the thicket of bamboo, on land belonging to the Sawaguchi family, whom Kiyomaru claimed were descendants of Jesus and his Japanese wife Miyuko. I don't know how well the Da Vinci Code sold in Japan, but Dan Brown could have another hit on his hands. Just something to make clear before we go any further, the origin story of these documents as a secret history passed down by a line of Shinto priests is obviously fictional. Every scholarly and academic source I find on this subject, including the Japanese ones, come to this same conclusion. The movement was quite popular within the Japanese military by giving a theological justification for imperialism. From the perspective of Amatsukyo, Japan wasn't conquering the rest of the world, but rather reuniting the world under the divine rule of the emperor. Despite its ultranationalism, Amatsukyo fell afoul of the Japanese government for straying too far outside of the confines of state Shinto. So in 1936, the movement was disbanded and the Takuji documents were confiscated. The original copies of these documents have never been found and were likely destroyed during the Second World War. This is where the Jesus story in Shingo Village probably comes from, but the story doesn't end there. But with these documents missing, how did Shingo recreate the last will and testament of Jesus? I mean, even they admit that the documents they have are just transcriptions of original copies. To understand this, we need to jump ahead a couple decades to the life of Yoshikazu Okada. On February 27, 1959, Okada received a revelation from the creator god Myoya Motosu Mahakari Omikami, usually shortened to Su-God. In this revelation, Su-God said to Okada, "The time of heaven has come. Rise. Your name shall be Kotama. Raise your hand." In this revelation, Okada was being told to perform takozashi, which to the best of my understanding is a kind of energy healing power seen in numerous Japanese myths. Over the years, Okada would receive other revelations in which he would give numerous teachings, including a secret history of the world. This secret history of the world spoke of the origin of the human race in Japan and its splitting into 5 races: the yellow race, the red race, the white race, the blue race, and the black race. The yellow race was the oldest and they settled in Japan. The ancient ancestor of the emperor had 16 children, whom Jesus, Moses, Muhammad, Buddha, and Confucius were descended from, which resulted in them instinctually going back to Japan. Is this starting to ring a bell? Well, it should, because it is far too similar to the Takuji Documents to be a coincidence. Here's what makes it more likely that Okada borrowed from Amatsukyo. Okada was born in 1901, and he served in the Japanese military until 1941. Remember when I said that Amatsukyo was popular within the Japanese military? Well, Okada very well may have been one of its followers, and after the military confiscated the Takuji Documents, he very well could have had access to them. And do you know what you guys have access to? A mid-roll! And if a mid-roll didn't just play for you then I would like to take this time to encourage you to subscribe to the channel if you're not already, and to also click the like button and to share this video. These are all easy ways to help out the channel in these uncertain times. So, with that out of the way, let's get back to the video. The main difference between the original Takuji Documents and Okada's revelations is that the latter is far more focused on the end of the world. Okada's revelations claim that the world is headed for a fiery cataclysm, and only the enlightened, spiritually purified Japan can lead the world through it. Okada took these teachings and founded the World Divine Light Organization, but it's more commonly known as Mahakiri. These revelations would be coalesced into a volume of scripture called Goseigen. Here are a collection of passages from Goseigen just to show you what kind of thing we're dealing with here. To establish a heavenly civilization and peace in the world, there is no means other than to make the spiritual realm of the land of the sun's origin into a land and a people that are bright, peaceful, without any disorder, and spiritually pure. Proclaim this to humankind that there is no other way for them to become aware. God placed the yellow race in Japan and dispatched and spread the races of 5 different colors throughout the world as branch races. He placed in the peerless place those with the sacred task to unite, called Sumara, as his deputies to govern this world. Those who are the spiritual origin of the 5 races are called the people of Yamato, those who rise straight upward from the center, those who have come to a stop on the mountain. Though it is an error for the people of Yamato to think themselves superior simply because they are of the head family of the 5 races, it is of vital importance that they become awakened to their spiritual origin as people born in the land of origin of the spiritual forms of the 5 races. People of Yamato should not just be people in Japan serving only Japan. It is their great task to become sacred messengers for the 5 races and for the next civilization. Awaken them to the happiness and miraculous origins of the world to come. Now you see, that last one is basically saying that, yes, the Japanese are superior to everyone else, but you shouldn't think about how you're superior to everyone else. But it's also super important that you become aware of how superior you are. But if Japanese racism isn't enough for you, don't worry, this train has a couple more stops to make. The Jesus Museum in Shingo has a copy of the Last Will and Testament of Jesus. But where did they get it? Well, they got it from the Takuji Documents, and if you visit, you can see them for yourself. But didn't those documents go missing during World War II? How on earth do they have copies of them? Well, you see, they have a version of the documents, but not the originals. All thanks to a self-described cosmo-archaeologist, Wado Kosaka. Researching this man is really difficult. He's referenced in a number of articles about the whole Jesus thing as the translator of the Takuji Documents, but you don't really hear much more beyond that. Well, I did some digging and found a website dedicated to his work called the Association for the Study of Takuji Documents. According to this website, Wado Kosaka published his version of the Takuji Documents in 1997. His version of the story is very similar to that of Okada, but with a twist.
We became human.
Yes, the version of the Takuji Documents you will find at the museum in Shingo talks about Jesus, the 5 races, and aliens. The yellow race that first arrived in Japan, those were aliens. In one of Kosaka's books, he claims that he gained fame by contacting aliens on live TV in Japan back in the 1970s. You'll sometimes see this story referenced in a few of the articles talking about the Jesus shrine in Shingo, but nothing outside of that. Now, I have no idea if this Kosaka guy has or had any fame in Japan, like he may have been like a Japanese David Icke or something, but his story about being famous on TV in the 70s for contacting aliens, I haven't found any evidence for that anywhere. He mentions it himself once in one of his books, and that's about it. So if there's anyone watching this video that has any kind of expertise in like the history of Japanese television that might know something about this, leave a comment down below, let's talk. Since we're nearing the end of this video, let's put together this whole story as we have it so far. We have a Shinto priest creating a piece of modern folklore that justifies Japanese imperialism, that is then transformed in the 1960s into a millenarian cult, which then in the 1990s becomes a UFO cult. With all this in mind, let's take one last trip back to Shingo. In the 1960s, the little village was trying to economically revitalize itself due to its shrinking population. Somebody at the local tourism board brought up that old Amatsukyo Jesus legend and thought they could turn those 2 burial mounds into a shrine and attract people from around the country and the world to their little village with a spring Christ festival. In the entire history of the village, only one Christian was ever known to have lived there, Toshiko Sato. She was born in Kobe, Japan, and studied at Sanaku Gakuen College, a private Christian university in Japan founded by the Seventh-day Adventists in 1898. She visited the town for a few months while a student in 1958 and fell in love with the place. She eventually moved to the village, but at the time had not heard about the graves. A few years later, some officials from the town came to her home and invited her to participate in the Christ Festival, considering she was the only Christian in town. She agreed, but her experiences was not what she had hoped for or expected.
I went and led some hymns. Afterward, a Shinto priest came out and did a ritual blessing, and I thought to myself, oh no, this is bad. I haven't gotten involved with the festival since then. Of course I knew the story about the graves was a lie all along. I've been to Israel myself. Anyway, I can't very well come out and oppose it. There's a big sign when you come into town announcing, "Welcome to Christ's Village." It's the center of the revival program.
And so there you have it, the story behind a quirky little Japanese tourist trap with connections to Japanese imperialism, occult racism, and UFOs. And so, with all that in mind, I would like to end this video with an open letter to the country of Japan. Dear Japan, I'm not mad. I'm not even disappointed. I'm just confused. Sincerely, a guy who watches enough anime to not be surprised when you do stuff like this, but doesn't watch enough to understand why. If you enjoyed this video, then I would encourage you once again to click that subscribe button if you haven't, and to click the like button and to share the video. That is the easiest way to help these videos during these uncertain, troubling times. However, if you are a person who has a secure source of income and disposable income to boot, then might I recommend that you support this or one of the many other educational channels on YouTube. If you want to support this channel in particular, then I would recommend going to patreon.com/casualhistorian. There you can get perks for joining up, such as getting to see videos early, as well as getting your name in the end credits of videos. Other ways you can support this channel are also down in the description below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.